Hello, everyone. This is Bishop Nathan Hinckley, and I trying something new tonight. Hopefully, it's working. I believe we are live streaming. Looks like there's already 6 people on, so I'm going to take it that this is working. So that's exciting. I also have 2 great guests tonight. I'm going to bring them in just a second, but we have a very important topic, and that is basically the treatment of women within a Mormon context, and we have titled it "Saints and Sisters." So that's very appropriate. We're going to bring in 2 sisters, and we have Amy, and we have a sister who will go by, and you're muted, by the way. She will go by Songs of Our Own. Oh, there we go. Yep. So I may just refer to you as Songs and Amy. Hello. How are you all doing?
Doing good.
I'm doing excellent. Excellent.
Perfect. So Amy had joined me on a previous episode and had a really good time. I actually my daughter reached out and said, "Oh my gosh, I love that Amy girl." So hopefully my daughter might be one of the 13 that are joining us already. And Songs, well, actually, I'll have both of you just take just a few minutes and just kind of tell me a little bit about who you are, where you live, and kind of how you relate to Mormonism. Who wants to go first?
Doesn't matter.
All right, go ahead, Songs. Let's hear. Just remind us who you are or where you're from and all those good things.
So I'm in Virginia, and I used to be a member of the Mormon Church. My mom joined the church in 1979, and then several years later, when I turned 8, I was baptized. So I've been in the church most of my life. And let's see, I don't know. I left about 11 years ago, but I didn't really start deconstructing till about 2 years ago. I was in a relationship with someone who I'd known in Mormonism, and just the way that whole relationship unraveled was kind of revealing about, women's roles and where I fit in the society. And I think what I had come to realize is a lot of the things that were wrong about the relationship were things that we had learned as young people growing up in Mormonism. And so at that point I started, I was also a little confused about things like polygamy because I was taught that there was only one other church. And then, I was very in the Mormon bubble. I had no idea about a lot of things in the world. And then I'm watching there's Sister Wives, and then there's Warren Jeff's groups. And well, how many of these groups are there? And so I started watching some of their videos in around 2022. And then I saw Growing Up in Polygamy and Sam and Melissa's website. And eventually I stumbled upon Mormon Stories with Lila Tuller and started watching that episode and was fascinated and just found out a lot of the historical things that I hadn't known because I wasn't paying attention to the church after I had left. So like the hat and the stone, and that people were admitting that Joseph Smith was a polygamist because I was taught all my life that he wasn't. So a lot of those things kind of were starting my religious deconstruction at that point. So and then I met in the chats of a lot of the podcasts. I started watching some folks like Culch and Gene Judson, Latter Daily Digest, Maven, a few others. And then so occasionally I will co-host with Gene on Latter Daily Digest or with Maven on her podcast. So
fantastic.
And that's kind of how I found you guys here. So
awesome. I appreciate that. Looks like Cultural Hall might be in the chat tonight too, so that's pretty cool. Thanks for that introduction. Songs. Amy, will you remind our viewers a little bit about you?
Sure. And in typical LDS Mormon fashion, I'm Amy Pearson. I have been a welfare specialist. I've been in the stake Young Women's. I've been Young Women's president. I've been a primary teacher. I've been an advisor in the Young Women's and also a counselor in the Young Women's. I was a member all my life until I officially left this past spring, but was on my way out for about 2 years or so. And a lot of it actually comes from this inner core gut feeling on how women were being treated. And I stood up for some young women I was the young women's president at the time, who were being treated terribly, and seeing how leaders handled that versus the way that when young men are mistreated. It really shook me to a core. And so that's me. That's who I am. I'm here in Knoxville, Tennessee. Haven't lived here my whole life. I grew up in California, moved here to go to the University of Tennessee, not to obtain an MRS degree, but to actually obtain a bachelor's degree. And I am here now. So excited to join you again.
Perfect. All right. Well, let's get into our slides here. And so we've titled this Saints and Sisters, Prophets, Patriarchy, and Women in the LDS Church. I just checked the chat and I saw somebody say his accent reminds me of home or something. So now I'm all self-conscious of it. All right, here we go. So I put this first slide on. Actually, let me do something real quick.
Well, Nathan, while you do that, I can start talking real thick in a Southern accent if that helps.
Okay. All right. So I put this first slide on, and some people might call this kind of nitpicky. Hey, that's why they call me Nitpicky Nathan. So, this was something it just kind of, it is what it is. So when Elder Jeffrey R. Holland's wife passed away, I noticed that all of the headlines were just that, Jeffrey R. Holland's wife. And I thought, doesn't she have a name? And so you see there's a couple headlines there, and this one was the church news. I'll just read it there. It says, family members gathered for the graveside service of Sister Holland, the wife of Elder Jeffrey R. Holland of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles and a former general officer of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So we get his even middle initial, which is very, very important. We get his, his calling and his, all of this about him, but we didn't even get her name. So I don't know.
That's because she can't tell us her name.
Okay. Well, I just, I thought that was kind of telling about how women get treated in the church. Is that
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Because something that I think because of me being kind of who I was, like I didn't think about those things like in the church because I was someone kind of off in the fringe and I never really like fully accepted like my view of my womanhood never came from the church. So I think part of that is thanks to not, going to the church until my mom was baptized. I was already, probably established in my thinking of who I am and my feeling of self. Because if I had established it in the church, I would have realized that my meaning, my significance in life only mattered in proximity to the men. And that's something that as an adult, I've had to realize because I just, you grow up thinking that that's not the reality until you see it happen to yourself, maybe in some ways, or people And I think this is just a prime example of that. She does not matter. It doesn't matter who she was, what she thought, what she loved, what she did, anything that she did that was, wonderful, which I'm sure she had a really interesting life. But in the church, it only matters in the proximity to him. So, it's his wife. I can't tell you that I know her name. I'm sure I was looking at the date. I wasn't a member of the church when she was, or I wasn't active at the time when she died.
Well,
but I don't know her name. I don't remember ever learning her name.
Yeah, I do remember that it was Patricia, and he did speak fondly of her. And so anyways, thanks for that, Songs. Let's go to the next slide. And I want to thank Amy for preparing these slides. I was going to just kind of toss her the ball here, and we can kind of go through it however you'd like, Amy.
Okay, thanks, Nathan. So I actually feel like some of these cringeworthy quotes sound better coming from a man, because when a woman reads these words, it doesn't quite have the same effect as if a man were to be bestowing us with all of his knowledge. So I'm going to let you read the quote, and then we can react to what that is.
Okay. Well, this is starting with the beginning. This is a Joseph Smith quote. Let this society teach women how to behave towards their husbands, to treat them with mildness and affection. When a man is borne down with trouble, when he is perplexed with care and difficulty, if he can meet a smile instead of an argument or a murmur, if he can meet with mildness, it will calm down his soul and soothe his feelings. When the mind is going to despair, it needs a solace of affection and kindness. Well, of course it does. What's the problem with that?
So the first thing, as you were reading that, it got me thinking about when I was on the last time, the polygamy cartoon, the plural marriage teachings toward children, where Joseph was so sad that he's going to have to do this hard thing called polygamy, and Emma's there trying to console him. And that's the purpose, women. You need to learn how to behave towards your husbands. Don't have a mind of your own. Your purpose is to make sure your husband is comfortable, that your husband is happy, that your husband can move forward. I know I shared this last time, but something that was in my patriarchal blessing that still irks me to this day was that I will only be able to reach my full potential if I can support my husband in him reaching his full potential in his both vocational and church callings. And it's like, okay, so I can't go any further. I can't have a mind of my own. Yeah, I just need to come home. I think of Gaston and how he wants Belle to rub his feet and be the mother, and like, that's my purpose. That's what I need to do. And that always sat funny. And as I've deconstructed things, it still sits really funny because my relationship with my husband is very much not that way. And I don't see how women just catering to every man's need is going to help with kindness and relationships. And when I did this picture, it's AI, so it's not an actual artist representation. But I think of, at the time, how many wives did Joseph have? And so he's saying this to these women who are sharing husbands or husband or however it is. And it's, oh, you just need to learn how to behave toward us men. That's your problem. You need to behave toward us.
Yeah, well, it's very instructive. When I was reading it, it brought back a memory. I was a theater major. And so one of the first jobs I had after college was working in living history. So that's when you put on the period clothing and you talk about the history of the time period. And I was on this 1850s like section. And one of the things that this brought back to mind is if you go back to that time period, like every state at that time had its own like cookbooks, and we had most of them. So we had the Virginia housewife, the Carolina housewife, we had the Tennessee housewife. All of them had like really weird things in them, like different types of meat that they would eat back then or whatever. But there was a section, the care of children and husbands. And this sounds like it came exactly from that. And knowing the plagiaristic nature of Joseph Smith, I'm sure that probably was where he got those, because those cookbooks go back to like at least the 1700s. And, care of your husband and your life at home. And this sounds like exactly like the dumb shit that it would say in there. And excuse my language, but, just you're only as good as your, husband's smile when he comes home and you have dinner laid on the table for him and all that crap. And I think too, like I grew up in the 70s. So when I would hear stuff like that at church, I'd be like just laughing because I thought it was hilarious. I didn't think people were serious. And then when I married someone who like had this whole like mindset, I was like, oh shit, this was real to you guys. Like that's really revealing, I'm divorced now, but back then that was a whole like it was kind of set my world on fire as far as like what I believed and what, was believed by my spouse and the rest of the church. Apparently, like, if you don't have dinner at home, then he can treat you however he wants because you didn't have that checklist of things to make your husband happy. And that's kind of an attitude that people had, probably still do.
So on that one, I don't hate the quote if there was the the reverse in saying that, of course, to be met with affection and mildness and a smile, that's all great, but did he give that also to the men? No. So of course when it's going the one way, that's pretty terrible. So let's go to the next slide. Do I get to read this one again, Amy?
Oh, yes, you do.
Okay.
You do.
Okay. All right. Our sisters are very tenacious. This is Brigham, by the way. Our sisters are very tenacious with regard to a man's having more than one wife, says the wife. Husband.
Let me read the wife.
Oh, okay.
Husband, I am capable of making your dinner. I can make your bed. I can tend to your fiscal wants. You do not need another woman in this house.
I'm probably supposed to take over now, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Do you not know that is a curse, please, placed upon the woman? Of course, we get that from DNC 132. Why so? That she may not become an angel to the devil. It is the order of heaven she should suffer in the flesh. Shoot, that's terrible.
Yes. Consider me suffering. Interesting, though, the most suffering that I felt was when I was trying to be the Mormon stereotypical housewife. And I did things because I had a priesthood leader tell me that I would not be able to go to the temple. I would not reach salvation if I was going to go to medical school. And if I did that and was on call and had to forsake my family, that was pretty much my damnation. And I had to choose. Do you want to go to medical school? Or do you want to have your kids not be taught? Do you want to be damned? All of these things. And so at the time, I went with what my brain was telling me was fear, fear, fear. I don't know if I will actually be damned, but I don't want to risk it. So I stayed home. I ended up working. I got my master's degree and ended up working while my oldest was about a year, while my husband was finishing school. And the guilt that I felt during that year was some of the worst guilt in my life. And then I stayed home with my kids. And honestly, I enjoy every minute that I was with them. But the amount of suffering that I had emotionally, mentally, even physically was so much during that time period. And I didn't have people I could just talk to. I didn't have a break. I mean, it was relentless. And then I realized later on after I went back to work when my kids were in middle school, and it was like, no, I needed more. And not saying that people who stay home that's a wrong path, but not everyone is meant to be home 100% of the time. That's the joy of being able to choose, and each of us having different personalities, different needs, different wants, is that we all can choose what works for us and what makes our family dynamics work. And I don't think that means that because I made that choice that I'm going to be damned. And also with this, the women suffering in the flesh and needing to have other women in the house and kind of this coercion toward women in this quote really just kind of rubbed me the wrong way.
Also, something I notice is he's basically saying, our sisters are very tenacious with regard. So he's basically saying our sisters keep whining about this, right? And so, but we're told that, polygamy, that everyone loved it. The sisters loved it. The men loved it. But right here, he's pretty much acknowledging that they didn't like it. They were giving them problems about it. So, yeah, we've got one more quote on polygamy coming up here next. I didn't want to cut you off those songs. Did you have something there?
Oh, no, I'm good.
Okay. All right. I put this one in here. This is a great Heber C. Kimball quote. If I am faithful all the time and continue right along with Brother Brigham, we will go to Brother Joseph and say, here we are, Brother Joseph. We are here ourselves, are we not? With none of our property we possessed in our probationary state, not even the rings on our fingers. He will say to us, come along, my boys. We will give you a good suit of clothes. Where are your wives? They are back yonder. They would not follow us. Never mind, says Joseph. Here are thousands. Have all you want. Oh, boy.
I have a question for you guys. So I think maybe my situation was unique, but we talked very little about polygamy when I was growing up in the church. Other than when we first joined the church, we talked about the two things that were the dark areas, which was polygamy and racism, and we talked very little about it. I don't remember ever when we read in Sunday school or in just growing up in seminary. I don't ever remember reading D&C 132 in any of those classes, like over the years. Like, did you guys talk about that a lot in your wards growing up? Because I don't remember talking about polygamy as much as I've talked about it in the last couple of years.
We did not. And actually, if we had the question, the instruction was always, oh, but we just don't know the answer to those things, and move right along. Next topic, please. Next question, please. It wasn't until I started really deconstructing that I even looked into the history of polygamy and how that was. But it was not something that we discussed.
Yeah. So when my whole family, we all went through this deconstruction, which was only about a year and a half ago. My daughter was well, first of all, she was the first one to leave the church of all of our family, and polygamy was a major issue, as it should be. But we went back together and looked at the seminary lesson of polygamy just to see what was taught, and we pulled up the teacher's manual, and there was literally 3 lines. They did it. They, we don't have to do it anymore. They fulfilled God's purposes, and that's about it. And that was just a few years ago. That she would have had that lesson. So, okay, we could spend days on polygamy, but I think we're moving along here. Amy,
Yes.
shall I read? Oh,
yes.
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, please read.
Okay. One apparent impact of the women's movement has been the feelings of discontent it has created among young women who have chosen the role of wife and mother. They are often made to feel that there are more exciting and self-fulfilling roles for women than housework, diaper changing, and children calling for mother. This view loses sight of the eternal perspective that God elected women to the noble role of mother, and that exaltation is eternal fatherhood and eternal motherhood. And this comes from the teachings of Ezra Benson.
So, to start on this, again, housework, diaper changing. I never considered that on my top 3 things of things I would be happy to do in life. And I'm sure I could change my perspective on that. I will say I have 3 kids, and being their mom is something that is one of the most rewarding things and also one of the most hard things to do, because you have that, am I raising them correctly? Are they becoming good humans? All of those pieces that go with it. But I feel like this really limits what women's roles are, especially when you try to put yourself in positions of women who don't have children, who did not get married. Are we
Mhm.
just, I mean, the promise is, oh, you'll be able to have that opportunity in the next life. So does that mean they get to suffer in this life? The other thing with this quote that really kind of made me scratch my head is losing sight of that eternal perspective of God's elective women to the noble role of mother. And I think of even just women in the Bible. So if we think of Deborah in the Bible, she was a leader, she was a judge, she was fierce. And that was like one of her defining roles. And Mary, yes, Mary was Jesus's mother, but even in her song that she sang, and I learned this just the other night and went back and reread it, and I'm like, wow, that is powerful. After she found that she was carrying Jesus's baby, or sorry, she was carrying Jesus as her baby. Um, she sang this song, and the song that she sings, calling leaders to be brought down, these are things that would have gotten her killed had someone heard her. And she was, prior to that, praying, wanting more for society. And so
Mm.
to have this be what is the definition of your role as a wife and a mother, being a wife and a mother, there's so much more to that. Song, did you have anything on that?
Yeah, when I read that, I was looking at the date, and I know I'm glad that my mother was not in the presence of this being said. This was before she joined. But the other part of that too was like this also, if you look at the history of it, came at the same time as the ERA movement was happening. And I didn't realize, because I was too young at the time, that the church's stance on that until recently. You know, I wasn't fully aware of all that. I remember hearing smatterings of it, but I don't remember hearing much about it. But this was a direct affront to the Equal Rights Amendment that was they were trying to get passed. And honestly, I wonder, you know, had my mom joined the church before this, you know, I don't know if she would have joined had she, you know, known the church's stance on many things at that point. But would that have changed her, you know, idea of getting baptized in a church that was against the ERA? Because she was, you know, we were not conservative, and my mom was, you know, for equal rights. So, and also this other, you know, the whole thing too, like women working outside the home. My mom was a single parent most of my life. I mean, she got married the same year she joined the church, but she and my stepdad divorced, and most of the time she's been a member. She's been a single, you know, parent. And, you know, it's just like, what is that saying to the people who are single mothers? You know, what if your husband, you got a divorce, or your husband died or whatever? It really does not like make a place for people who do not fit a traditional role. And there are many of those people who end up in the church. So like, what is that saying to these women? It's just
Yeah.
interesting.
So I kind of have my toes stepped on that one with the eternal perspective. I used to say that as like bishop, I would say it all the time from the pulpit. You've got to keep an eternal perspective. In other words, kind of like you said earlier, Amy, you know, you've got to be miserable now, you know, because it's, you know, and as someone pointed out, this, you know, so eternal pregnancies, that's basically what this is saying.
Mhm.
And then, not to take us off the topic, but we hear this whole kind of fight about whether or not we still believe in you'll have your own world or planet, that whole thing.
Mhm.
You know, right here it's talking about eternal fatherhood and eternal motherhood. Okay, that's going to happen somewhere. Where do you call the place that that's happening? You might want to call it a world. You might want to call it a planet, but wherever that place is, that's what is meant by the whole planet world thing. And that is Mormonism. That's what we have to look forward to.
And I'll be honest, being pregnant for me was horrible. I would not want to be pregnant for eternity. I'd be like, never mind, everyone. Give me some rum and I'll go be a pirate. So,
Yeah.
I love it. All right, shall we go on?
yes.
Okay. President Ezra Taft Benson, that probably means I have to read this one. Is that right?
It does. I think there's only one that's a woman.
Okay. Has stated that when a husband encourages or insists that his wife work out of the home for their convenience, not only will the family suffer in such instances, but his own spiritual growth and progression will be hampered. Yeah, I mean, so many times that, and the church will gaslight the hell out of us and say, well, we never said that, women can. Well, yeah, we know women can, like that they have the ability to, but we have been taught to obey our leaders, and we've been filled with this kind of quote that they should not. And so if they do, then they have that guilt, and according to this quote, it's going to greatly hamper our even the man's spiritual growth and progression.
And with that, what does it make then people within the LDS church do? How do they view women who are out working? Is it because they have to out of necessity and, oh, poor woman, you have to work? And it further just reinforces the idea of this patriarchy. If women are not being voices out in society, if they're not being able to have the choice of whether or not they want to have a career, whether it's part-time, whether it's a day a week, whether it's full-time, those are conversations that should be had between the family, and it shouldn't be anyone's spiritual progression or growth be hampered because of it. Because some people, like me, I'm a better person when I feel that I have something else that is filling my bucket outside of 100% being home, especially now that my kids are all in high school.
Okay. Shall we go on?
Sure.
All right. So we're going to get into dress. And this has been something that I have written about quite a bit on my Facebook page. My wife, when we were active, which would have been, 2 years ago, and all of our life before that, she always wore what, Mormons would consider appropriate and modest and all that. Always wore her garments. If we were going to the lake or whatever, she wore her garments and then changed when she got there. She always did the things. And so anyways, once we started going through a little bit of deconstruction, and I won't go into all of it now, but she started, wearing what she wanted to wear, and got called out by some very close people in the family and friends, and it caused a huge issue in our family, and some of that still has not been anywhere near repaired. But the things the church has said about dress, especially for women, have caused an untold amount of harm. And so here's one quote from Elder Tad Callister. Was he we've got to give Brother Joseph a break guy? I think that was him. Got to give Brother Joseph.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go. The dress of a woman has a powerful impact upon the minds and passions of men. If it is too low or too high or too tight, it may prompt improper thoughts. even in the mind of a young man who is striving to be pure. Men and women can look sharp and be fashionable, yet they can also be modest. Women particularly can dress modestly and in the process contribute to their own self-respect and to the moral purity of men. In the end, most women get the type of man they dress for.
So, Nathan, I put this picture here because I'm really curious. The people whose shoulders are showing, one of the people's knees are showing. Man, what type of man are these girls or these women dressing for? I mean, scandalous.
That's actually such a sinister statement because if you think about it, I mean, that is like the epitome of rape culture. You're responsible for how someone treats you because of what you're wearing. That's such bullshit. People are responsible for their behavior because it's their behavior, not because of what you're wearing. I mean, no one has ever been raped because of what someone was wearing. It's always because of they're encountering a rapist. So I don't accept any of that shit. That just really pisses me off when you get that. I mean, it's really kind of just unbelievable that in 2024 we're still having conversations like this.
Yes.
But yet in every religion, including Mormonism, this is what's taught. You're responsible for what happened to you because you wore a short skirt, or your porn shoulders, which I pulled mine out for this occasion. Your porn shoulders are showing. Porn shoulders. Your shoulders are
porn
pornography.
shoulders
Your body
too.
is pornography. Yeah, I mean, to tell a young girl that her body is pornography, what the hell kind of message are you sending? And what message are you not sending to young men or any man that, one, that he should be lusting after young girls, and two, that he is not responsible for his behavior, that someone else's clothes is responsible for him doing asinine and horrible and horrific and just awful things to people. Like, that's the excuses because, well, she was dressed in a mini skirt, or her shoulders were showing, or she was wearing a slutty shirt or whatever. Just, I do not understand that we are still living in a society that's still sending out this message. And yet here we are in 2024.
And then you have additional quotes from, oh goodness, it's on that document I sent you, Nathan, I think. If it's not, it was in 1992. I'll have to find the reference. But it was about victims of rape and how you should go back and rethink your role in that and meet with your bishop. And if your bishop determines that you had a role in that, then you need to think about how you need to repent, because your forgiveness will never happen. And I remember, as being someone who is a victim of rape, hearing those things and then having hammered in my head all throughout Young Women's how you dress is going to give men impure thoughts. I was both in fear and also angry because I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was not putting these thoughts into anyone's heads. And one of the things I made sure of when I was in Young Women's, which I had quite a few parents actually come up and say, are you going to actually allow them to dress? These parents of other girls come and say, are you going to allow these other girls to actually stay at the activity dressed like that? My response was always yes, because I wanted the girl to know that we cared about her and we loved her, and it didn't matter what she was wearing. Your worth is not based on the clothes that you have on your body. That's something that is God-given and is divine within you. Sorry, I can go on a whole soapbox on that for a very long time.
No need to apologize. I could actually talk about this for a while too. And one of the first things that I kind of wrote about that was kind of putting my neck out there, I named it Modesty Schmodesty. And if you go to my Facebook page, you'll see it. You'll even see a picture of my sexy wife in a bikini, which she never wore and I never posted. But lo and behold, we went to the lake and I took a nice little picture and I posted it. And you would never believe people saying, and I quote, you were flaunting to everyone that you weren't living the gospel, because I put a picture of my wife in a bikini. But there was so much it's part of this whole thing is the double standard. So there's a guy that Amy probably knows, and I won't say who he is, but known throughout the stake. Older man, probably in his 70s now, and super active, super in shape, muscular, works out a lot. And for his 60th, maybe 65th, whatever birthday, his wife posted a picture of him online. He's like, I'm so proud of my husband, you know. And the guy looks amazing. If I can look like half as good as that, I'm happy. The guy looks amazing, but he was shirtless, you know. And so I'm looking through all the comments, and of course, mind you, you know, stake leader, everyone in the stake, all of the friends, almost all of the friends, all Mormons and active and whatever. Everyone is, oh, congratulations, he looks great, blah blah blah, just praising the guy, which is fine. I think we should, but you change the genders and all of a sudden everyone is going to be tearing her down. You need to cover up. You're flaunting to everyone that you're not living the gospel. Oh man, I could talk about this shit for a long time.
Which fast forward how many years in the future, and the same groups of people have made comments about a female who would post pictures of herself working out, exercising, these things, and people have an issue with it. The same people who were liking that other, and I made it, I noted the same people on both who would who would say things negatively but liked the other. And I don't think that's a Knoxville, Tennessee issue. I think that is a church-wide issue.
Well, we can't go on from this slide without mentioning that, lo and behold, if you live in a hot climate, you can now apparently get your shorter length garments and be able to show a little bit of your shoulders.
Shoulders, yeah. How exciting.
Okay. Yeah, I can't wait. Let's go on to the next slide. So this speaks of the three evils, the three,
Yes.
the three, what did he call it? Well, the dangers, but this is the big three boogie monsters here of the church. So it says the dangers I speak of come from the gay lesbian movement, the feminist movement, both of which are relatively new, and the ever-present challenge from the so-called scholars or intellectuals. Our local leaders must deal with all three of them with ever-increasing frequency. Yeah, that was Boyd K. Packer talking about the three enemies or dangers or whatever of the church.
So first to this, I'm thinking 1993, scholars, intellectuals, feminists, and the gay lesbian movement, which I hate that it's called the gay lesbian movement. Let's not call it that. Let's call it people asking for wanting equal rights. Let's call it that. Why don't we call it that? In 1993, these things weren't new. So along with this, I am going to read a post that I put on Facebook and got quite a response I wasn't expecting to get, but I did have a warning on it where I said, I'm a feminist and an intellectual, so you may have threats to your faith if you're LDS reading this. So if you're LDS and have gotten to this point and haven't had threats to your faith from here on out, now that you know that I am a feminist, I have 2 master's degrees, I'm getting my PhD now, watch out, world. I'm an intellectual in training. You may now have a threat to your faith, and it will be my fault. But I said, I'll spare some of it. But I talked about, instead of holding the pain, I still see things that are systematically wrong with the LDS church. And it's like spitting a suture after incision has healed. Instead of holding the pain from that foreign body, I'm releasing it. Partly to dispel the benevolent gossip, and mainly to put my feelings into words so I can heal from the spiritual trauma. The most spiritual people I have met have been women. I watch them and I learn from them. I see these strong women and I think, gosh, it has to be hard if you're in a religion that doesn't harness that power and instead has leaders who say things like, we believe in your mission as women of God. We realize that you are the emotional and sometimes spiritual glue that holds families and often ward families together. That was Elder M. Russell Ballard. The LDS Church has often limited women's roles in significant ways. Their contributions are often confined to auxiliary organizations like Relief Society, Young Women, and Primary. Important, but always subordinate to male leadership. Their ability to serve in these auxiliaries is even determined by men, and in these roles, their autonomy is restricted. Male leaders must approve budgets, decisions, and curriculum. For decades, the temple endowment ceremonies included language that emphasized a woman's obligation to her husband rather than directly to God, reinforcing that hierarchical relationship. While changes have been made in recent years, these patterns remain a reminder of the historical and ongoing relegation of women to secondary roles. I can say for myself, it was hard for me to fit in a place where I did not feel valued and felt like a second-class citizen. When I chose to speak up about very wrong things that were happening, I was in turn deemed a problem. I was an emotional, and this was a direct quote from someone in the stake presidency, attack dog, according to male leaders, because I was standing up for things that were wrong. And at the time, I was speaking up about young women who were being severely mistreated. I hope women in oppressive patriarchies can see that they are more than the roles imposed upon them, more than being seen as emotional glue or the supporters of others. We're thinkers, leaders, creators, and forces of change. To see incredible women reduced to stereotypes of softness, submission, and support is disheartening. Women's spirituality and strength deserve not to only be recognized, but they deserve the full empowerment to lead, inspire, and make decisions. The value of women is not tied to their service to a family, a ward, or an organization. It's inherent, expansive, and limitless.
Beautiful.
And the number of people both within the church and outside of the church all said that this is something that needs to change. And I had many people that I grew up with who said that this was even why they left the church, was how they were feeling as a woman.
That's amazing. I'll say too, when I was looking at that one, I saw the date and I remember that I was in college and I was not active in the church. I was a theater major. I had that same year lost my cousin who had AIDS, and he was gay. And I, at that point, was very adamant about being in the activist role. And I feel like I've been since before that time. And I think had I heard this from someone at church, I probably wouldn't have ever gone back. But, I went back years later. I didn't know at the time either about Prop 8 because I was on the East Coast and I wasn't, attending church very much when that was going on. I didn't realize the church was actually sending people to, promote that hatred. It just feels like so many issues here that, this is the wrong side of history to be standing on, and that these issues of, scholarship and feminism and homosexuality are just like, there's still issues that, this was in 1993 with Boyd K. Packer, who's long since been gone. And here, how many years later, we're still talking about these things because these are the reasons people are getting excommunicated: scholarship, feminine, women's rights, and, the LGBTQ community, which the church keeps. What I don't get is, like, how do you consistently stand on the wrong side of just basic humanity for people, treating people like a human being, recognizing their rights to exist and exist in your congregation in peace and treated with love, like we call each other brother and sister, but that's not what this kind of statement is representing. And it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't get
And-
it. I don't get it. Get it then. Don't get it now.
Yeah.
And it's not what Christ did by example. Who did he reach out to? The outcasts, the prostitutes. He was ministering to those who are being, there's the Pharisees, Sadducees, they were scholars, but he was ministering to those who were being pushed aside by mainstream religion. So why, as a church body, should we make people's worth and make people's ability to be considered a worthy, or whatever adjective you want to put there, child of God, why do we make that contingent upon whether or not they want to have equal rights, whether or not they want to be able to stand hand in hand next to someone else and say, God, love me for who I am? Because I think at the end of the day, that's what everyone wants, is for people to see them and to love them for who they are.
I agree.
Absolutely.
And as the Daisy May points out in the chat, sometimes the church makes little changes, and they did in the temple, that to kind of reflect a little bit about this. But then, and I wrote about this also. I called it, I hate change. I hate improvement, because you're stuck with, well, why was it ever the other way to begin with? And so I feel that what Daisy May's saying, that was one of the last bricks for them, that they, once they made the change in the temple, it's like, oh, well, it could have been changed all along. So shall we go on to the next slide? We have just a few more.
Real quick, though, with the change in the temple, and I haven't been since it was changed, so someone else would have to fact check this. But I've heard that it was changed to, instead of the woman going through the husband to Christ, now they're covenanting to the new and everlasting covenant, which, after someone pointed that out to me after my Facebook post, that even makes me go, what? Because the new and everlasting covenant is polygamy.
So it's not much better.
Right.
Okay. Well, yeah, they changed the terminology. At least she's not covenanting to follow the husbands. But yeah, as you point out, you're basically doing the same thing. So, okay, so the bishop presides over every person in the ward. Hey, that was me. And directs their local church activities. All of your adolescent life, you will be under the direction of the bishop. He will appoint leaders and supervisors to do his work, but he will be very much interested in your progress. Your life here will be constantly weighed by him, for he is the judge of your worthiness, to receive higher ordinances and to be worthy to go to the temple. If you are going to go ahead.
Quick, just to put this into context, this was actually something that came from the old young women's manuals before things changed over to the Come Unto Christ curriculum, or is that what it's called now?
I think so. Yeah.
Whatever it's called, the new stuff.
Okay.
This was the old young women's manual. So anyways, this is geared toward those young women at the time, 12 to 18.
Perfect. All right.
Can I say something too? I'm dating myself, but I checked because I was trying to figure out what year this was, because I put everything in a timeline in my head. The date on this actually says 2010. So when you say the old, mine was much older than that. So this is a newer policy to me. 2010 is when this is dated to. So. Oh,
I see, Daisy. Yes, Daisy, you're right. Come follow me. Sorry.
There you go.
Yeah, I remember when I was in the Young Women's Presidency second time, that we were using these manuals, and how horrific these manuals actually were. They were awful. But anyways, go on with the quote. Okay.
Continuing. If you are going to work in the church system, you will learn to be obedient to your bishop. If you get into trouble, you will be wise if you seek his advice and counsel. He has been designated by the Lord and appointed by the president of the church to be responsible for you and to make sure you progress according to your worthiness. And when women forget it.
That's something different.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I didn't see the bottom. Your worthiness and ability. Okay, had something covering it. Okay, so let me just say this. Both of you two are much more, learned. You have a lot more experience However, if you were in my ward, I would be the one telling you what to do. I've never been to a day of college in my life. Not saying that that's required, but there were a lot of times that I had people come in and I'm just sitting here like, what do you want me to say? I had people asking, should they have another baby? Because one baby was not healthy. And so they wanted to know, should they have another one? And I'm like, what do you want me to say? I mean, I had all kinds of things that people trusted and me to tell them. And I oftentimes tried to, go to your home teacher, go somewhere else. This is ridiculous to put all of this faith and trust in the bishop. I'll tell you this, I can count about 10 bishops right now that I know of who are not active or, don't go anymore. So, which I'm one of them, and so some of those bishops, my point, sorry, my headphones come out. My point was that some of those bishops I'm referring to were excommunicated and did some things that weren't so great. So my point is that the bishop is no different than anyone else. And
so
go ahead.
something along the lines with you just said that, some have been excommunicated. I'm not going to say when this was, when I was Young Women's president, because I don't want people to be able to figure out anyone in particular. But there was one bishop in particular that after multiple young women had interviews with him, he had asked things that crossed the line. I mean, granted, bishops' interviews, like asking things about masturbation and fornication, all of these things, no young woman, no young person should have to go sit in front of someone. No adult should have to sit in front of someone else and be asked those questions and be expected to answer those to be determined if you're worthy or not. But it feeds into that rape culture that Song talked about earlier. And if you're not able to speak up, if that's your authority figure, what are you going to do? Where are you going to turn? And I had these young women on multiple occasions asking me, what do I do? This made me feel uncomfortable. He picked me up after the interview and hugged me, and it made me feel uncomfortable. But this is my bishop. He's the one who determines if I can go to the temple with the rest of the youth. I don't want to be the one not going. Others have asked, like, I did make out with my boyfriend and he did touch me. And, now does this mean that I have to have these conversations with some man in a room alone? It sets things up for unhealthy boundaries, the lack of boundaries, lack of teenagers, women, adults, whatever, being able to even speak up for themselves. I had a bishop actually ask me how often my husband and I have sex. And what do you say? Like, I was at the time dealing with some really heavy stuff, and I just don't even, like, what do you say to that? And this is the person, like, if I it's an authority figure. And when you're already dealing with things that happen to you because of authority figures, it makes you even more voiceless.
Totally. And Nathan, I can't imagine what you were going through being a bishop too. Like, I was thinking when you're saying that, I hear this humility in your voice about, like, just that whole responsibility of a whole ward, that you have to, like, everything that happens is falling on your shoulders, and I can't imagine having that responsibility. I'll say that, though, too, in the 30 something years that I was a member, I got lucky that I never had, a bishop who was, asking inappropriate sexual things or doing things that, I felt like I had all people who were, trying to do the best job they could. And they were, they made efforts. I won't say that was like that throughout our stake, because when I was a beehive, I was 12 years old and I joined beehives. And the first thing I heard was there were two bishops. And this was around the same time in our stake who I don't even know that they were excommunicated. I know nothing. I know it wasn't reported to the police because that's the time when it didn't happen. But they had both been caught molesting girls who were a couple years older than me. And like, so, that was always a concern kind of in the back of your head, but your parents would still send you alone, with the men. And I mean, luckily I was in a ward where I had, trustworthy people who weren't trying to do something odd or strange or whatever, sexual in nature, but they were out there and we were aware of it. But I just feel grateful that that was not my experience. But I know many women especially since I've left the church, who've had, bishops who were just really sexually inappropriate in one way or another. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of responsibility. And then we talk about this whole thing of discernment, which we all assumed that was a thing, but it's really, that word means absolutely nothing.
Yeah. As far as the bishops, I can tell you, bishops, when I was bishop from 2013 to 17 or whatever it was, so sometimes bishops get a bad rep or whatever for asking the sexual questions. And I agree now they shouldn't, but if the bishop is doing what he is told from his leaders, then he does ask. We were told, and I shied away from this, but I did ask this, especially to the young men. They said, well, don't ask your young men if they masturbate. Ask them when the last time they masturbated was. We just assume that they do. Of course, it was never that blatant with the young women, but they did tell us to mention those things. And also, of course, now the church allows for another parent to come in, but I've never seen it happen. They know it can happen, but I've never seen it. Maybe it is more common other places, but that's not my experience.
I also think too, I can't remember how many years ago, but there was a mission president who came from the Chattanooga stake who, and I don't know if you remember this, Nathan, who ended up, he had done things to some of the female missionaries. And then with that in the movie Heretic, I thought the movie Heretic had me thinking about that all over again. And then when I came across this quote, it had me think about it all over again as well. And, is it really safe to send sisters out on missions where, again, the mission president is presiding over them and, they're knocking on people's doors? I mean, is it safe to send men out? But not that women are these delicate flowers, but the way that the authority in the LDS church is kind of placed on, you become submissive to the man. Is this a safe thing to even be doing? And I just asked that as a question. I'm glad I don't have to deal with that with my daughter, since she is very outspoken against the LDS church and wants to nail her theses to the door, but it would break if she did it. So that's I don't know, just thoughts.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have a few more slides. Shall we continue? All right. Let's talk about women and their pettiness.
Oh, I'm so petty.
And when women forget their pettiness and selfishness and submit themselves to their own righteous husbands as unto the Lord, and when they are subject to their husbands as the church is expected to be subject unto Christ, then will the divorce rates reduce and families will grow and children will be happy, laughing children. It really all just hinges on women forgetting their pettiness.
100%. That's what makes marriages crumble. Women, you're so petty. Stop it.
Petty hopes and dreams, a life of, career. Those are so petty.
Yeah. I just want to have a voice. I don't want to be changing diapers all day. Hey, I may want some help changing those diapers. I'm exhausted. Yeah.
Petty equality.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Spencer W.
Penny break
Kimball.
from all the work.
Yeah. Yeah, that wasn't his only problematic quote. He has a whole book of them with the miracle of forgiveness, but we
With this
won't go.
too, I thought of women who may be in abusive relationships
Mm.
and how hearing something like this could make them feel even more so like they have no way out.
Yeah,
And that it's their own fault. If there's
Yeah.
problems in the family and the children aren't laughing and
absolutely.
being happy, they must, it's on them.
I grew up
It's
in
a
a
vicious
toxic
cycle.
family.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a cycle. I grew up in a toxic family where my parents fought with each other all the time.
Mhm.
I guarantee if my mom had just listened to my dad, that we would still not be laughing and happy children because that toxicity was still there.
Hmm.
Oh yeah. I mean, like my mom and my dad was her first husband, and like their relationship was tumultuous, and like my only memories are like violent ones. And they divorced when I was probably 3. And then she remarried my stepdad years later, and still not a peaceful marriage because she was Mormon and he was Baptist, and it was just like constant, conflict. And then, even myself, I was married to someone who was violent, and I remember being told, well, if you only had dinner on time, then he would, he wouldn't be violent. And that was my pettiness of not having dinner on time. So I got really petty and I made sure it was, and then nothing changed. So, these petty women that just want to be not abused and, treated equally and, just treated with fairness. And yeah, it's all on the petty women, right?
All
And
right,
it's not
Amy.
enough if you don't feel guilty.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Amy, you're up with your read here.
Oh,
Okay. Young women, you will be the ones who will provide the example of virtuous womanhood and motherhood. You will continue to be virtuous, lovely, praiseworthy, and of good rapport. You will also be the ones to provide an example of family life in a time when families are under attack, being redefined and disintegrating. You will understand your roles and your responsibilities, and thus will see no need to lobby for your rights.
Mm.
That was said in my best Utah women conference speaker voice.
I do not love a lot of that, but specifically just the last part. Like, what, has there not been a lot of good from lobbying for rights? Like
yeah.
the church would probably acknowledge that, but now we're trying to shame that or whatever.
And in 2013, like this isn't even something from like the 60s and 70s, like 2013. Don't lobby for
Yeah.
your rights.
Mm.
What?
That's the year left. You notice at the top two, the first few lines, young women, you will be the ones who will provide for the example of virtuous womanhood and motherhood. And the first part of it is virtuous, lovely, praiseworthy, and of good report. And you recognize that phrase
Mm-hmm.
from the young woman's motto.
Yep.
We believe in being, and so it's all part of she deliberately used the words from the young woman's motto in that. I mean, just like how gross.
Yeah.
And then to, weaponizing families, so that if you advocate for your rights, you're not allowed to speak up for your rights because that just goes against you being a family person. It goes against you being a woman of your family. And there's no need to lobby for your rights. Like to say that you can't ask for your rights, to tell women that that's not okay to be, it's just putting you in that position of like never having your rights and not having and being always second class, or maybe even in this case third class citizens in the church. Like that's not a way to treat people.
Yeah. Speaking of the young women theme or motto or whatever they call it that they repeat every week,
Mm.
not sure if you all know that it was rewritten a few years back. I don't know when, but one of the parts that I hate about the new one is it talks about qualifying for
Mm.
exaltation or God's love or whatever, but it uses as we do this, this, and this, we will qualify,
Mhm.
and that just puts a whole nasty spin on God's love or whatever it is that it's like we have to qualify for it.
I was rogue. I never made the young women stand and repeat it because I felt like it was just propaganda. And I didn't want to stand and repeat it. And so, yeah, I never made them do it. And then the person when I was in the young women's, I was an advisor. And then right before I left the church, the person who was in the young women's presidency, they kept me on as an advisor and would have the girls say it. And the girls, like, they were like, this is so awful. This feels so cringeworthy. Like, we do not want to repeat this. And because it is kind of cringeworthy, even when everything is based on just so you can prepare to go to the temple. I mean, everything in young women's is you're going to prepare to go to the temple. You're going to prepare to get married. This is what you're going to do. And at like you turn 11 and 12, this is what you're getting every Sunday. How are you going to go to the temple and get married? And why is this something that we're thinking of at 11, 12, 13, 14, 15? Like, why are we thinking about this? Why don't we think about like, hey, what are your talents? How can you foster things that you're good at? How can you become a better person? How can you serve in the community and not serve to say, oh, look, I'm a member of the church and this is what Mormons do, but actually find something that interests you and serve and be a part of something and really learn how to be the best person you could be. It's not about marriage. It's not about the temple. It's about being a good person and learning how to be a kick-ass woman.
Yeah.
I agree. And I would add, the whole narrative too is that if you're pursuing education, the only reason you're doing it is because if something were to happen, like financial hard times or a divorce or your husband dies, you'll be able to support yourself. But actually pursue a career that makes you happy, doing things that you love, just like you would tell your male children, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Okay, well, we have two last slides. Really excited to get to both of these. So this is Gordon B. Hinckley. I'll probably need to read this one since, the relation and all. It is plainly evident from the statistics that young women are exceeding young men, are exceeding young men in pursuing educational programs. And so I say to you, young men, rise up and discipline yourself to take advantage of educational opportunities. Do you wish to marry a girl whose education has been far superior to your own? What's wrong with that?
I've actually, when I came across this quote, I actually asked my husband if he's planning on going back to school, and he's like, no, that's all you. You do that. and my I call it my midlife crisis to go back and get my PhD was because I felt so robbed of going to medical school. So now I'm getting a PhD so I can do medical research. But to say like, oh man, you can't let those women be smarter than you. Like, what on earth? You don't want a smart, intelligent wife. These are the people who are supposed to be teaching your children. So you want someone dumb teaching your children? Like, come on now.
Once again, encourage them to go, do education and all that bullshit. Fine. But why do we have to do it at the end and say, well, you're going to have to catch up with these girls. You don't want to be, stupid, dumb comment.
Beaten by a girl.
Yeah.
Isn't that? Yeah.
Yeah. You guys need to start studying like a girl. All right. All of this has boiled down to our last slide, and anybody that knows Mormonism and knows this topic probably has come across this slide, but it would not be complete without it. Do you want to set this slide up at all, Amy?
I will set this up. And to set this up, I want you all to know I have my favorite lipstick and lip gloss here. So for days that I want just a very nude, neutral look, but want a little bit of hydration and plumpiness, I use the Ilk Makeage. I don't know how to pronounce it. Something, whatever. And it's their lip plumper, and it works really great. So for people following along, great. And I get no money from this. My favorite nude lipstick, this is by MAC, and it's just a very neutral color. So favorite nude to wear with any style clothing, dress up, dress down, really works with any color. My favorite moisturizer. So my lips get really dry. So when my lips get really dry, I like to use the It Cosmetic, and it's still more of a nude color. I'm a natural redhead, so I can't go too boisterous with my lipstick, but you can probably see here.
Here, hold on. I got to put you on solo now. Can we?
Yeah. You can probably see here. It's a very neutral color. Now, a little tip that a friend named Becca McCombs taught me, shout out to Becca, is if you don't want to get lipstick on your teeth, don't do the whole little blotty thing. This is going to look really bad. So please, if your mind's in the gutter, get it out of the gutter before I do this. But and then it gets the extra on your finger, and then it doesn't get it on your teeth. This is my new lipstick that it's a little bit darker. It's by NARS, and I got this to wear with my shoulder porn dress at a company cocktail party, and you could see it's just a little bit darker.
Yeah.
So I put these on so that I can make sure that I'm going around and following the advice on the next slide.
Okay. All right. Well, I was going to play the video for it, but we'll just read it. This is Elder M. Russell Ballard at a 2015 Young Single Adult Devotional. If you just put in, put a little lipstick on, you'll pull this up. Anyways, it says, let's see. Elder Ballard suggested to women that they don't wander around looking like men. Put a little lipstick on now and then and look a little charming. It's that simple.
It's that simple. I mean, I just gave you 4 different options right there.
Oh, yeah, you can see that whole video quote. And he says it as he's kind of joking, but it's like, here's something about comedy, about jokes. They have to kind of be a little bit true or they're not a joke. And so, he's like, come on, what he's doing, he's trying to tell the young single adults to go find you a woman. And it's like, men, go do this. Women, put a little lipstick on. Look a little charming. Don't go around looking like a man. Yeah, it's
hilarious.
It's hilarious. And it's exactly what you would expect from your grandpa or your great grandpa, right? And I've wrote about this 1,000 times. Like, if these apostles can just be grandpa, then it's perfectly in line with what you would expect from a guy, an older generation guy. Put a little lipstick on, look a little charming.
And while they're at it, they'll remind you about how they used to garter check women too.
But as we all know, they're not just old men with, sometimes decent ideas. No, these guys are speaking for and in behalf of the Lord Almighty, telling you to put a little lipstick on.
The Lord of 50 years ago, though.
Yeah.
Lord is always 50 years or so behind. So
you're right. Yeah. Everything trails by 30 to 50 years in our church.
I think if any of these people are listening right now, apostles, general authorities, you want a business idea? Start a lipstick line and make it called Charming. And then you can have all the different shades and the type of man that you can get with each shade.
I love it.
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
you didn't expect to get business advice here on the bishop's interview, but that's exactly what you got. And I could not thank Amy and Songs enough for joining. It's been an hour and 20 minutes of just pure bliss. And even though I sound sarcastic, I truly mean that.
Oh, well, thanks. It's been great.
Thank
It's been
you.
great.
Been
Therapeutic to
fun.
be on here.
I hope that
Yeah.
you'll both join me again sometime in the near future. And I want to thank all of our viewers. We've had quite a few in a very lively chat. I tried to star some of those, but want to thank everyone. Of course, we would appreciate you to like and subscribe and do all that stuff. And we'll continue to bring you exciting information like what we've done here tonight. So thanks again. Any last words from you two?
Thank you.
I'm going to go wash this lipstick off and put on some sweats and a sweatshirt and look like a man. That's what I'm going to do.
All right, everyone. Thanks again.